Hello everyone. Today, I'm going to share the story of how, for 8 long, agonizing, and soul-crushing years, I was forced to live as a ghost in my own life, in my own home. I was meticulously and systematically conditioned by my own parents to hide every achievement, to mute every spark of success, and to swallow every ounce of personal joy, all to appease my adopted sister and maintain a fragile, toxic, and utterly unbearable peace. But when they conspired to hijack the single most important moment of my life, the culmination of all my secret hopes and silent suffering, I finally stopped hiding. I walked away from the suffocating, gilded cage they called a family, and in doing so, I discovered a world of freedom I never knew existed, a path to healing I desperately needed, and the unshakable strength to build a life that was entirely and unapologetically my own. If you want to hear more stories of survival, resilience, and reclamation like this, please show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Let's begin. In the twisted, unspoken constitution that governed the micronation of my family, the highest and most sacred form of love was my absolute, unconditional, and unending sacrifice. It was a love defined not by support, encouragement, or protection, but by my silent willingness to allow my adopted sister, Kara, to systematically dismantle everything I ever worked for. Love meant I had to smile through the pain as she shattered my accomplishments. Love meant absorbing the emotional and sometimes physical blows of her unchecked jealousy. And then, most crucially, love meant forgiving her instantly and without question. "I'm sorry" were a foreign language she never bothered to learn. Kara is 22 now. My parents adopted her when she was 13, a whirlwind of profound, unspoken anger and deep-seated pain delivered to our quiet, pristine suburban doorsteps straight from the labyrinthine foster care system. I was 14 at the time, a hopeful, terminally naive girl that a sister was a built-in best friend, a confidante for life, a partner in crime. I had no idea she was about to become my warden. Before Kara, my world was simple, predictable, and bright. I was the cherished only child of 2 loving, attentive parents. Our home was a sanctuary of warmth, a place filled with easy laughter, spontaneous dance parties in the kitchen. I remember my 12th birthday with a clarity that now feels like watching a scene from someone else's life. My parents threw me a surprise party, filling our sun-drenched backyard with all of my friends, a cascade of colorful balloons, and the comforting smell of my dad's barbecue. He, with a proud, beaming grin on his face, presented me with a brand new, powerful-nificent gift meant to encourage my budding passion for astronomy. My mom hugged me tightly, her embrace a fortress of love, and whispered, "We are so incredibly proud of the brilliant, kind, and wonderful young woman you're becoming, Lena." In that world I was seeing I was valued. My achievements, however small, were sources of genuine family pride. It was from this place of abundance and stability that my parents decided to adopt, to share our fortunate home with a child who had never had one. My mother, I later learned, had a younger sister who had struggled immensely, and she carried a deep-seated guilt, a feeling that she hadn't done enough to save her. Kara, in many ways, was her second chance, a project to pour all of her unfulfilled savior instincts into. I, of course, was thrilled. I spent weeks preparing for Kara's arrival, painting her room in what I hoped were calming colors, arranging books on her shelves, and imagining all the late-night secrets we would share, the unbreakable bond we would form. I was so ready, so eager to be the best big sister in the world. I had no idea I was actually preparing for the slow, painful demolition of my own childhood, the pattern, the brutal and unrelenting dynamic that would come to define our relationship and poison the very air in our home, was established almost immediately after her arrival, setting the stage for nearly a decade of misery. Just a few short months after Kara joined our family, I won the state science fair for a complex robotics project I had poured my heart and soul into for the better part of a year. I was ecstatic, floating on a cloud of pure, unadulterated accomplishment. My very first instinct, born of that naive hope for sisterhood, was to share this incredible joy with her, to use this moment as a bridge to connect with the quiet, sullen girl who still felt like a ghost in our house. So she was the very first person I told, my voice trembling with an almost unbearable excitement as I proudly held out the gleaming gold medal for her to see. Her reaction was not what I had hoped for. Her face, which was usually a carefully constructed mask of detached indifference, contorted into a terrifying expression of pure, unadulterated rage that I had never witnessed before and will never forget. She snatched the medal from my outstretched hand, and with a strength that was truly shocking in its ferocity, threw it directly at my head. The sharp, heavy edge of the metal caught me just above my eyebrow, and a sharp sting pain exploded across my face, followed by the warm trickle of blood. "You don't deserve this!" she screamed, her voice a raw, echoing sound that seemed to shake the very walls of our home, a primal cry of anguish and fury. Then, as if the act of violence had completely drained her of all energy, she collapsed onto the floor, her body racked with loud, theatrical sobs that sounded more like a performance of anguish than a genuine expression of sadness. My mother came running into the room, drawn by the commotion. She didn't check on me. She didn't even seem to notice the blood that was trickling down my face and into my eye, blurring my vision and staining my shirt. Her gaze was immediately and entirely fixed on Kara, a crumpled, sobbing heap on the floor. She rushed to her side, cradling her and whispering soothing, comforting words. She then turned her eyes to me, her expression not one of concern for her injured biological child, but of cold, sharp, and utter disappointment. "This is your fault, Lena," she said, her voice devoid of any warmth or compassion, each word a carefully aimed dart. You know how sensitive she is after everything she's been through. You must not, under any circumstances, show off your achievements around her. That single horrifying moment, that shocking and instantaneous inversion of victim and perpetrator, set the grim, unyielding tone for the next 8 years of my life. My successes were no longer a source of pride. They were dangerous weapons that I was repeatedly accused of wielding against my fragile, traumatized sister. This unspoken rule, carved into the very foundation of our home, remained in effect until one perfect, sun-drenched afternoon last spring when everything finally, irrevocably, and beautifully changed. That was the day I tore open a thick envelope and read the words that I had been dreaming of, praying for, and secretly working towards for my entire life. It was my acceptance letter to the prestigious Eastbridge Medical School. Years of relentless academic pressure, crippling self-doubt, and countless nights spent crying in frustration over complex organic chemistry textbooks had all led to this single triumphant moment. I had finally, against all conceivable odds, made it. For a few fleeting, blissful hours, I called my closest friends, my voice cracking with an uncontainable joy that felt foreign and wonderful. I posted the news online, watching with a giddy sense of disbelief as a flood of congratulatory comments poured in from people who saw me simply as Lena, not as a component of a dysfunctional family unit. I even allowed myself to start browsing for apartments in Riverside City, imagining a life where I could wake up in my own space, make my own coffee, and just be myself. For once, I was just Lena, not Kara's constant, not the designated giver, upper of dreams and aspirations. Just Lena, a future doctor, ready at long last to step into the light and live her own life. Then my mom came home. She smiled, a wide, bright, performative smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "This is wonderful news, honey. Just wonderful. We need to start planning how to make all of this work." She sounded happy. But her eyes, those betraying windows to the truth, told a very different story. They were calculating, already formulating a complex strategy that had nothing to do with my success and everything to do with accommodating Kara's needs. After about an hour of this hollow, performative support, the other shoe finally and inevitably dropped. "Of course, Kara will need to go with you," she stated, her tone casual, as if it were the most obvious and logical conclusion in the world. "Riverside has some of the best trauma centers in the country, and you know she simply cannot handle you leaving her right now. If you get a 2-bedroom apartment, I can even help you out with the rent." The image her words conjured in my mind made my blood run cold. Kara living with me in my first real space of freedom. Kara, with unfettered access to my expensive medical equipment, my irreplaceable textbooks, my lecture notes, my future. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling slightly as I tried to reason with her. "You know what happens when she sees me succeed. You know what's Oh, Lena, don't be so dramatic. She hasn't had an episode in months." She lied, a blatant, insulting falsehood, as if Kara hadn't just systematically and silently shredded my brand new set of MSAT prep books just the week before in a fit of quiet, simmering rage. "If you truly care about your sister," she added, her voice taking on a sharp, guilt-laced edge that she had perfected over the years, "you would want to be there to help her heal." The thing is, my mother had been weaponizing Kara's tragic past from the very beginning. The story was told and retold so many times that it became a sacred, unchallengeable text in our household. Kara had been the designated scapegoat in her last foster family. There was nothing overly violent, just a slow, crushing, and methodical campaign of psychological cruelty. No birthday presents while the biological daughter was thrown lavish parties. Worn out, fitting hand-me-downs while the other girl got brand new outfits for every season. Her straight A report cards were tossed aside without a word, while the other child's B-minuses were celebrated with trips for ice cream. "You don't deserve nice things" became their cruel mantra, a phrase they drilled into her psyche until she believed it was the gospel truth. And now, Kara had made it my mantra too. She had absorbed their poison and was now injecting it directly into me, the nearest and safest target for her pain. In many ways, she was stronger than me, colder, tougher, and far more willing to inflict pain without a second thought. But she had one critical weakness. Her rage followed a distinct and observable pattern, one that I had learned to read like a seismologist reading an earthquake chart. If she stared at something of mine, a new book, a good test score, a piece of jewelry for a full 10 minutes, it was a warning sign. An eruption was imminent. She was about to break it. 15 minutes of that silent, intense staring. That meant total. That was my cue to hide or remove the object of her obsession. So, I learned to live a life of stealth and suppression. I hid anything and everything I cared about. I never celebrated my victories where she could see or hear them. But medical school, you can't exactly hide 4 years of grueling, all-consuming progress. You can't hide a white coat. You can't hide the process of becoming a doctor. I'll never forget the incident when I was 16. It was a day that solidified the horrifying reality of my situation. Kara found my college acceptance letters, which I had foolishly and naively left on my desk. I didn't even know she had seen them until I sat down for dinner at the kitchen table that evening. As I took my first bite of pasta, I noticed a strange, acrid, chemical smell, which I hadn't noticed before, suddenly hit me. It was rat poison. "What the hell is wrong with you, you psycho?" I screamed, my chair clattering backward as I shot to my feet in a state of pure terror and disbelief. Kara just let out a wild, unhinged, and utterly chilling laugh as if it were the funniest joke in the world. And my mother. My mother didn't panic, she didn't call for help. She didn't even ask if I was okay or if I had ingested any of the poison. She simply scolded me for bragging too much by leaving my letters out and told me that I needed to learn how to be more humble. It was in that horrifying, reality-shattering moment that the truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. My mother wasn't blind to Kara's dangerous and destructive behavior. She wasn't just making excuses for a troubled child. She was actively protecting it. She was an enabler, a co-conspirator in the ongoing campaign of torment against her own daughter. So, when it came to the monumental achievement of getting into medical school, I finally stood my ground. Cannot and will not live with me. I told my mother, my voice shaking but resolute. I desperately offered a dozen alternatives. Kara could FaceTime me every single day. She could come and visit me on weekends. I promised I would be home for every single holiday. I even spent my precious free time researching specialized trauma programs closer to our home so she could get the help she so clearly needed. My mother's face hardened into a mask of cold fury. Then I'm not helping you with your school expenses? She snapped, playing her ultimate trump card. Fine, I said quietly, the single word tasting like the first breath of freedom. I'll just take out more loans. The 2 months leading up to my departure were a special kind of hell. My mother immediately launched a calculated and vicious smear campaign against me. She called all of our relatives, weaving a heart-wrenching sob story about how her selfish, ungrateful daughter was abandoning her poor, traumatized sister in her greatest time of need. She even had the audacity to bring Kara to my part-time job at the local pharmacy. Kara just stood there, her eyes fixed in an intense, silent stare at my white pharmacist's coat for a full 10 minutes. Then, as if a timer had gone off in her head, she accidentally knocked over an entire display of medication, sending hundreds of bottles scattering across the floor. She muttered under her breath, a venomous incantation that was clearly meant for me to hear. My manager understandably asked them never to come back. Then, just 1 week before my white coat ceremony, the sacred symbolic start of my medical career, my aunt called me in a panic. Your mother bought plane tickets to Riverside, she warned, her voice hushed. She says Kara has to be at the ceremony. Lena, she's been staring at the picture of the white coat on the school's website for days on end. And I knew exactly what that meant. My mother had spent 8 long years teaching me, through both words and actions, that Kara's pain, Kara's trauma, and Kara's feelings mattered infinitely more than my safety, my happiness, and my dreams. But I wasn't that scared, obedient, and utterly broken 14-year-old girl anymore. I was done being the sacrificial lamb. I was a survivor, I finally knew my own worth, and I was ready to fight back for my future. So, I formulated a multi-layered and desperate plan designed to protect the one moment that was truly and completely mine. First, I went on all of my social media accounts and changed the location for the ceremony. I posted a fake, official-looking update, complete with a fabricated reason, stating that the event had been moved to a different, much larger auditorium on the far side of the campus. Then, I called the school's event coordinator and my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and embarrassment, explained the entire insane situation. The head of security, a kind, gruff, and wonderfully understanding man named Doug, was an absolute angel. He listened patiently to my story and promised to personally watch out for anyone matching my mother and Kara's physical descriptions. I also enlisted my new roommate, Paula, as my lookout and ally. She already knew the whole sordid and frankly unbelievable history with Kara and was fiercely, wonderfully protective of me. The morning of the ceremony, I was wide awake by 5:02 a.m. Not that I had managed to sleep a single wink anyway. My nerves were frayed, my stomach in knots. I tiptoed to Paula's closet and retrieved my pristine, perfectly pressed white coat from its secret hiding spot. Yes, I had been hiding the single most important symbol of my future in my roommate's closet for weeks. You learn a thing or two about extreme self-preservation when you live with someone who once casually tried to poison you over a college acceptance letter. I got dressed in the bathroom with the door not just locked, but with a heavy chair wedged firmly under the handle. It may have seemed paranoid, but you try living with my sister. Paula drove me to the campus, taking a series of winding back roads to avoid any potential ambushes. We took her car as mine was far too recognizable. On the way, my phone was already blowing up. My mother had texted a dozen times. Her messages were a masterclass of aggressive manipulation. Where are you, sweetie? Kara's just so excited to be there to support you today. Support, right? Like the time at success by meticulously feeding my official score report through a paper shredder. We parked in a distant, rarely used lot and slipped into the building through a back service entrance. Doug, true to his word, was there waiting for us. He gave me a subtle, reassuring thumbs up. No sign of them yet, kid. We've got your back. I made my way to the prep room where the other medical students were a happy, chaotic bundle of nervous energy. They were taking selfies, adjusting their ties, laughing, and just being normal. I found a quiet corner and sat down, my eyes glued to the door, every nerve in my body on high alert. My friend Eli, a sweet guy from my study group, came over and asked if I was okay. I just mumbled something about being nervous, not wanting to unload the insane, unbelievable truth that my violent, unpredictable sister might show up at any moment to detonate the biggest day of my life. His worst family drama, as he had once told me, was that his dad had missed a few of his childhood soccer games. It must be nice. About 30 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, my phone lit up again. It was my mother. This time she had sent pictures. Pictures of her and Kara standing with forced smiles outside the wrong building, the fake one from my social media post. They were standing there looking confused and increasingly annoyed. Kara was bizarrely overdressed, wearing a glittering gown as if she were attending the Oscars instead of a university ceremony. Then, the angry texts began to roll in, one after another like machine gun fire. "Where are you? This isn't funny, Lena. Answer your phone right now." I powered it off, my heart pounding. A few seconds later, Paula texted from her designated lookout spot in the main lobby. "All clear so far, you've got this?" The ceremony coordinator began lining us up in alphabetical order. I was somewhere in the middle of the long line of aspiring doctors. That made me harder to spot from the audience. As we began our slow, formal procession into the vast auditorium, my hands were shaking uncontrollably, but not from stage fright. I was just waiting, bracing myself for that awful, soul-crushing, and horribly familiar scream to rip through the air. "You don't deserve this." The auditorium was packed to the rafters. It was a sea of proud, smiling parents, all armed with cameras and bouquets of flowers. As we walked to our designated seats on the stage, I scanned every single face in the crowd, my eyes darting back and forth. No sign of them. Maybe, just maybe, my elaborate, desperate plan had actually worked. We took our seats, and the dean began his opening speech, dedication, and the noble calling of medicine washing over me. I barely heard a single thing. I just kept watching the doors, my focus absolute. And then I saw her. Not Kara. My mother. She was at the back entrance, engaged in a heated, frantic, and increasingly loud argument with a security guard. Her face was flushed with a deep, blotchy red of pure fury. She was pointing a trembling finger toward the stage, pointing directly at me. But Doug, my hero, was standing firm, blocking her path. She didn't have a ticket. You see, in all the chaos, I'd forgotten to mention in any of my communications with my family that the ceremony was a ticketed-only event. Oops. Then, the dean called my name. Lena Michaels. I stood up on legs that felt like they were made of jelly, walked across that brightly lit stage, and for the first time in 8 long, painful, and suffocating years, I celebrated something wonderful. Something monumental, without an ounce of fear. No flying trophies, no ripped-up papers, no poison in my food. Just me in my white coat, finally stepping into my own future. After the ceremony, I found Paula outside, a massive trident grin spreading across her face. She filled me in on what I had missed. My mom and Kara had shown up just moments after I had received my coat. Apparently, Kara had tried to rush the stage, screaming my name, but security had intercepted her at the door, the same guards who had successfully kept my mother out. My mom had then caused a huge, embarrassing scene, screaming about discrimination, mental health, and trauma, until other parents started staring and security threatened to call the campus police. They had left in a huff just before the authorities arrived. On the drive back to Penn, I finally summoned the courage to turn my phone back on. The screen lit up with a barrage of notifications, 47 missed calls, over 100 texts. The last one from my mom was chilling in its complete lack of self-awareness. "Come home immediately. We need to have a serious talk about your behavior." My behavior. Not Kara trying to physically assault me at a public, professional event. Not my mother enabling and encouraging her. Mine. I didn't go home. I went straight to Ellie's apartment, where he and his roommates were throwing a celebratory party. I wore my white coat the entire night. I took a million pictures. I posted every single one of them online. Because for once in my damn life, I was not going to shrink myself to make Kara feel more comfortable. The party lasted until 2:00 a.m. I crashed on Eli's couch and woke up the next morning to even more angry texts. This time from my dad. He usually stayed out of the drama, a passive, silent observer, but now my mother had clearly gotten to him, poisoning him with her twisted narrative. His message was a familiar cocktail of guilt-tripping, a long, rambling lecture on family loyalty and the importance of understanding trauma. It was the same script, just a different voice. I knew I had to go home eventually. All of my worldly possessions were there. But I also knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that something fundamental had shifted within me. I had stood up to them. Hadn't ended. Around noon, Paula, my ever-loyal getaway driver, picked me up. We did a slow drive-by of my house first, a reconnaissance mission. The curtains were drawn. It looked quiet from the outside, but I knew better. Inside it was a raging battlefield of guilt trips and silent, simmering rage. I made Paula come in with me. The house was eerily quiet. My dad was in the kitchen, and defeated, he immediately started in on me about family responsibility and my duty to Kara. I cut him off. "I'm just here to pack my things," I said, my voice cold and firm. His face fell. We went to my room and started methodically tossing things into boxes and suitcases. Dad just stood in the doorway, a silent, useless sentinel, watching as I dismantled my childhood. We were nearly done when I heard the front door slam shut with a violent bang. It was my mother's voice, sharp and furious. Then heavy, fast footsteps pounding up the stairs. I knew that sound. It was the sound of impending destruction. I grabbed the last box and rushed for the door, but Kara was already there, standing in the hallway, a terrifyingly still figure, staring into my now empty room. Her face was a complete blank, an unnerving emptiness that was somehow worse than her usual explosive anger. She looked at me, then at the box in my hands, then back at the empty space that used to be my room. The staring had begun. I instinctively checked my watch. 1 minute, 2? Paula shifted nervously beside me. She had heard all the stories, but she had never witnessed this prelude to chaos firsthand. 3 minutes. 4. Kara's hands began to shake almost imperceptibly. Here it comes, I thought, bracing myself for the inevitable explosion. But then, something completely unexpected happened. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She just turned around, walked back to her room, and slammed the door behind her with a definitive thud. Then my mother appeared at the top of the stairs, her face twisted with rage. She demanded. I looked her right in the eye. I'm moving out. She let out a laugh, a cold, humorless, and utterly terrifying sound. You're not going anywhere. Family stays together. Kara needs another word. I just pushed past her. Halfway down the stairs, she grabbed my arm, her nails digging painfully into my skin. You're being selfish? You're traumatizing Kara all over again. I yanked my arm free and kept walking without looking back. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked up at the house one last time and saw Kara, a lonely figure standing at her bedroom window, just watching silent, her face unreadable. It sent a profound chill down my spine. I stayed with Paula for a few days, frantically searching for apartments. The tense, a disgusting cycle of rage and guilt. Kara isn't eating. She keeps asking why you hate her. Then my dad started texting saying Kara was acting strange, too quiet. I almost Paula was my rock. She is an adult, Lena. Let her parents handle it, she reminded me. I found a tiny studio apartment near the campus. On the day I signed the lease, my dad showed up. He looked terrible. He told me things I never knew about how much worse Kara's early days with us had been. How a therapist had explicitly warned them that she might fixate on me and see my success as a personal threat. And then he finally, after 8 long years, said the words, I'm sorry. I should have protected you. Then he dropped the real bomb. Kara had found my new apartment. She had been sitting in her car outside for hours just watching. He had followed her, but she wouldn't leave. I looked out the window and there she was, a dark silhouette in her beat-up Honda. My skin crawled. My dad begged me to talk to her, said she seemed different, sad, not destructive. I laughed in his face. Kara, apologize. But he left, and she stayed. For 3 days, she sat in that car. 3 days of me jumping at every sound, checking the locks, living on edge. Finally, on the 4th day, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked outside right up to her car and knocked on the window. She rolled it down. Her eyes were red and swollen. She had been crying. And then she said something that shattered my reality. I know what I did to you. Not an apology. An acknowledgement. She handed me a notebook. I've been writing it all down, she said. Martina said it would help. She told me she had been going to real therapy twice a week ever since I had left. She told me about her foster family, the real version, how they had loved her and then discarded her when their biological daughter was born. When I saw you with that trophy, she whispered, her voice thick with a pain I had never heard from her before. Happy, proud, deserving. I couldn't stand it. Because if you deserve good things, it meant that maybe I was the problem. Maybe they were right about me. Then she warned me. Mom was planning an intervention. The whole family was supposed to ambush me at Thanksgiving to guilt me into coming home. She showed me the family group chat, a cesspool of vicious messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins, all painting me as a heartless, monstrous villain. And there, in the middle of it all, was a message from Kara, defending me. She deserves to live her own life. I was wrong to hurt her. You need to let her go. They had turned on her for it. My destroyer had become my protector. We made a plan. She would go to Thanksgiving and keep the family distracted. I would disappear for the day. I spent the holiday with Paula's family. Her mother told me, family is about choice, not blood. It was the first peaceful holiday I'd had in a decade. When I turned my phone back on that night, amidst the storm of angry texts from my family, there was one from Kara. They came. You weren't there. They left. Mom's planning something else. Be careful. The harassment escalated. My mom pretended to be me to try and withdraw me from school. She called my landlord with fake complaints. She called my job and said I was sick. But the final straw, her nuclear option, was the protest. She, my dad, and my aunt showed up outside the medical school with huge, printed Sai Famed Anta Success and Shem Anali, and I was mortified. I had become that girl with the crazy family. That night I called my mother and told her to meet me alone. She showed up with my dad and aunt. But Kara came too, sitting at a separate table, a silent guardian angel. I let my mother rant, and then I calmly laid out every piece of evidence of her manipulation and her enablement of Kara's abuse. I told her about the poison, the destroyed property, the years of living in fear. Her face crumbled. She seemed to see the truth. I failed, she whispered. I failed both of you. Kara stood up and walked over to our table. Stop, she told my mother, her voice firm. You've tortured her enough, let her go. I laid out my terms: no more calls, no more protests, no more contact unless I initiated it, or I would file a restraining order. My dad, looking at me with a newfound wrist to enforce it. I'm proud of you, he said. I should have protected you years ago. Outside, Kara handed me an envelope with cash to cover the work I'd missed because of my mother's harassment campaign. She told me she was moving into a therapeutic group home to get the intensive help she needed, a place where my mom couldn't use her as a weapon anymore. We stood in silence, 8 years of pain hanging between us. I hope you become an amazing doctor, she said finally. I'm proud of you. And the past year has been quiet. My dad and I text sometimes, baby steps. I got a Christmas card from my mom. I kept it, but I didn't reply. I heard from my dad that Kara is thriving. She works at a plant nursery now, learning to nurture things instead of destroying them. On my birthday, I got a text from an unknown number, "Happy birthday. You deserve all good things." I knew it was her. I saved the message. I am at the top of my class now with a tight circle of real, supportive friends in a tiny apartment that is my sanctuary. The life I fought for, the life I hid is finally mine, and I deserve it. Every last beautiful, peaceful bit of it.